I'm Glenn Flickinger of 21st Century Consulting, and today I have the honor and privilege to be with Kevin Harvatine, a professor at Penn State and researcher at Penn State University. And we've been talking about circadian rhythm. Kevin, as you do your research, which I find incredibly fascinating, we talked about some practical applications in another video. What else would you like to tell the people that are watching this?
Yeah, so kind of the evolution we went is from looking at daily patterns to seasonal patterns. So, you know, we all see the birds flying north and south every year, and they know when to do that. And, you know, the patterns in the cow aren't quite as obvious, but they're really clearly there when we look at milk yield and composition. So I think everybody experiences that lower milk fat and protein during the summer. And quite often we blamed it on our nutritionist, right?
Yeah.
And you know, we start making ration changes and maybe actually throwing additional money trying to solve that problem, which might not actually be a real problem. So what we see is that we have highest milk fat and protein January 1, lowest July 1. The change varies a little bit. It's higher in the north than the south, but you'd expect about 0.2 units. Now when you look at milk yield actually peaks later in the year, right around end of March, early April. So it's actually aligning more to our equinox. And then we have lowest milk yield that occurs out in September. Now I don't think this is heat stress because it's just way too consistent to be heat stress, but it's probably a natural pattern that the cow has. Now we don't really know how to manage out of this right now. Our best recommendation we can give is controlling lighting. So our long days, getting lights on for 16, 18 hours, all the research is really consistent in getting us 5 to 10% more milk. So right now our best recommendation is to do good light control, lights on 16 to 18 hours. The harder part of that is we need a dark period for part of the night. But that's the best recommendation we have to try to manage out of that seasonal pattern. But the other side is set your goal. You should have a different goal for fat and protein January 1 than you do for July 1. You should have a different goal for milk yield March versus September.
So you said it, but I'm going to ask you to say it again for emphasis, and that is from January to July 1st, what's a reasonable amount of fat drop?
So we'd expect it here in the upper Midwest and the Northeast about 0.2, maybe even a 0.25 unit change.
And the other thing you talked about was September being the low, and you said it was not heat stress.
Yeah, no, and not saying heat stress doesn't do anything.
Right.
Heat stress has an impact that's very clear, but is a separate impact from that seasonal pattern. And I think that's where we can actually have things go really wrong, is that if we're not managing for heat abatement and we have seasonal pattern, when we stack those two on top of each other, now we've lost a lot of milk and a lot of components.
I like what you said earlier too about not chasing stuff that's unrealistic. You know, we've all seen the 20-year graph by USDA, and that is so consistent year after year. And yet we spend a whole lot of money sometimes chasing something.
Yeah, and even on the other side of that, there's times where in January you think you're okay, but you should actually be doing better. So if you do not change your goal, you're missing. You're not as accurate and precise as you.
Yeah, we're like cows. We like just to get in that rut and stay there. But you bring up an excellent point. Changing with the seasons.
The last change that we're seeing is actually in genetics. So if we look over our genetic potential over the last 10 years, we're up about 0.15 units in milk fat.
Wow.
So the other thing is that we should have a different goal for today than we did a decade ago.
Again, Kevin, this is fascinating stuff to me. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I am looking forward as you get new information. Thank you very much for giving us this time. This is Kevin Harvatine from Penn State University. I'm Glenn Flickinger from 21st Century Consulting, and that's our opinion.